All join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple on this Saturday morning. I think it's super important, just as a reminder to everybody, that we all do our best to find a deep appreciation and love and care for all religions. Super important. And, you know, a place like this is interesting, like the Dharma Bum Temple. Any place that you create to introduce a 2,500-year-old religious practice, often seen today as a philosophy and a way of life, which it is, but it's also a 2,500-year-old religion. Anytime you create a place like that, what you're bringing together for the most part are people that come from religions that aren't Buddhist. And there's a chance that people who come from religions that aren't Buddhist and end up at a place that is Buddhist might not have the best taste in their mouth of other religions, right? I won't do a show of hands. I don't want to call anybody out here. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves that if you look at, and I'm not a religious studies person, I'm not a comparative religious person, I've done enough interfaith work and talks and things like that, but it's not something I focus on or specialize in. But I feel pretty confident and comfortable saying that the message from most religious leaders over the last few thousand years, most, is really beautiful and is very Buddhist. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, and this is really not meant in a way to reflect anything about me or what I share, but really the Buddhist teachings in general. In the last 2 weeks, I've had, which I may or may not touch on, but 4 high school students from Christian High who about 2 weeks ago came and did an interview after Tuesday night, and they were fat. It was like 4 17-year-old kids asking questions about Buddhism. And all they said, now I knew they were coming, but I didn't know who they were here. And at the end, they said to me, in essence, that everything they heard shared that night was the same thing they get from the teachings of Jesus Christ. And I thought that was really beautiful. In fact, their message to me was that the message of Jesus was love, and that everything they heard that night was about love. And then I had another person who I've known since I was 4 years old, so that's a long time, who said to me that all I shared was the teachings of Reformed Judaism. So my point is, you have Jewish people, you have Christian folks, you have the Buddhist teachings, a lot of similarities. So as we sit here at a time where it's Christmas Eve morning, is that what you would say? Right? If you are someone that has thoughts in your heart and in your mind of maybe hatred or maybe anger or maybe distaste or maybe disgust or whatever that might be, we don't have enough time in the world to get into all of that. I'm just suggesting that maybe if you have found an interest in Buddhism later in life because of your lack of interest or warmth towards something else, maybe open that heart up a little bit and recognize that the teachings themselves are probably all beautiful. Now, what the people do, what the places do, is a totally different story. And like I said, this is only an hour-long time, so we don't have enough. We don't have enough decades to explore all this right now. But it's just something that, with conversations that came up recently, as early as 20 minutes ago, or recent, and the last couple of days around this time of year. What I often hear, maybe not often, what I hear around Buddhist places with people that weren't raised Buddhist is a real negative view on other religions. And so what in essence you're doing is you're taking some sort of anger, some sort of hatred, some sort of feeling, and you are labeling a whole group of people. And that, in essence, in many ways, isn't too far different from what you think those people are doing. So if you're sitting there and this is pushing your buttons a little bit, it's supposed to. If this makes you a little bit uneasy or uncomfortable, welcome to Buddhist practice. If you showed up not expecting a Jewish kid to talk about Jesus at a Buddhist temple, then I'm sorry. But that's what I got, and I'll kind of close this little whatever it is on this thought, and it was 2 Tuesdays ago. And like I said, it was 4 high school kids and 1 college kid from Point Loma Nazarene. And for about 90 minutes, they just asked the most beautiful questions. And it actually gave me a lot of hope and a lot of faith and a lot of really beautiful feelings that these kids that were growing up very diehard, devoted in this religion, that often shares and practices things that don't sit well with a lot of people, that those things weren't sitting with these 5 kids. All that was sitting with these 5 kids was tremendous love for everybody. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. So for some of us who may be kind of, older generations and hardened in our hearts a little bit around certain things, maybe explore it a little bit. Because it's not very Buddhist to go judging and hating other people's stuff and things. So, all right, good luck with all that. So we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome, good morning. Thanks for being here. Feel free to chime in. There's a chat box. Say hello, introduce yourself. A couple things to tell you before we begin with the meditation. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're on a bench or a chair. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move and then return to stillness. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, Recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention. Focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, resting. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not necessarily easy. It's not always fun. Meditation is not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often throughout our lives, present moments are incredibly difficult. And so this practice is learning to be with life as it arises. And that's difficult for us. Because when things don't go our way, we don't like it. And so we often try to run away from it, escape from it, solve it, fix it, change it, correct it. It often seems like the last thing we want to do when something is difficult is just to sit with it. When in reality, very often, that's the best option. Doesn't mean it's going to feel good. But what was the first thing the Buddha taught? Life is suffering. But for some reason, we want to skip that part. That Buddha was such a liar. There's no suffering. We're just going to fix it all. Learn to be with it. Learn to understand where it comes from. Learn how to make changes in your life to minimize it. And see what impact that has. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's it. I mentioned earlier, and as I started the meditation, the one thing that popped in my head that I want to make sure I come back to and point out, often reference my time in Taiwan, but over there, well, the example I often give is if you're here in this country and not too many cabs taken anymore, but in the old days when there were just taxi cabs, now they're Ubers and they're all decked out differently. But when you used to get into a taxi cab and you had a cross hanging on the dashboard, the driver didn't do everything that Jesus said. Go to Taiwan, get into a taxi cab. You know what's hanging on the dashboard? A Buddha. You know what the driver's not doing? Everything the Buddha said. So I want to also close that thought, at least on my end, and add that the same thing applies towards Buddhists. What I mean by that is Buddhist places don't always do the best things. Buddhist people don't always do the best things. And often that gets overlooked from people who go from one religion or out of one religion and go exploring other stuff. And there's this idea that, those Buddhists are so perfect. You know how many Buddhists I know? A lot. You know how many of them do really terrible, harmful things to people? A lot. You know what that means? They're human. So let's not throw all the Buddhists into a category and think that they are free from harming or doing things that aren't so pure and right as we may judge. The Buddha taught beautiful things. They're really hard to do. Jesus taught beautiful things. They're really hard to do. So, in fact, if all of us just picked one or any other great religious leader and actually followed the words, it'd be a much healthier society. But, one can hope. So now that I've loaded that into the first 30 minutes of a morning, I'll pause and open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's potentially on your mind. And if you are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. So feel free to chime in with questions. And I'll do my best to respond. So we'll use the rest of our time for questions. Yeah, I thought I saw that already.
Mine's not a question, it's
Yeah.
a comment. But you've talked about gratitude.
Ah.
So I've been, for a while now, every night before I go to bed, I think of 3 things I'm grateful for and why. And last night I realized that Dharma Bum's temple keeps making the top 3, along with Mission Trails and my husband.
Yeah.
Okay.
In no particular order, of course.
Particularly.
And we can delete the film in case he ever watches this.
But I'm just so grateful that this place is here, and I'm so grateful for you and the people who help run this temple, because it's just, I always leave here thinking about things, and it kind of, there's a path I want to be on, and I feel like it corrects me and kind of puts me on the path again. So it's just a thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Years ago, somebody said that, and I didn't agree with this at the time. This is probably 15 years ago. Somebody said, I'm not trying to make people Buddhist. I'm trying to make them think. And like I said, I didn't agree with it at the time. I was, kind of very early in my gung-ho Buddhist stage. And I was like, forget making them think. We're going to make them Buddhist because that's going to make them better. And then eventually realized that exactly what you said, make people think, or instead of create conditions. In Buddhism, we talk about causes and conditions. And the Bodhisattva practice is to create conditions that allow people an opportunity to explore the nature of their own mind. And we call those Buddhist temples, but those can be many things. But in this regard, it's a Buddhist temple that creates a condition for people to come together and think and explore their own life. Because that's where you'll find all the happiness, all the joy, all the peace, right? To explore what we're grateful for. So thank you. Yeah.
So I appreciate that you spoke about looking at the common threads of different religions. I'm one of those people who was raised Catholic and then dabbled in Buddhism and Judaism and Unitarianism and all of that, and there's a common thread.
Mm-hmm.
As I've circled back around to my Buddhist practice, particularly my meditation practice, the piece that I'm really getting now is that the exploring your own mind is really key.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can just rotely, Buddha said to do this, or Jesus said I can just do all those things because I'm supposed to.
Right.
But if it comes from a place of clarity, then it feels more real or genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to echo what you said about meditation practice. Some days I hate it. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like it's a mess in there, And I'm like, oh, there's that again. Oh, there's that again. Then it can be discouraging. And then other days it's just like, oh, it's so peaceful. I wish I could always be this way, But it's like, I'm getting to get it, that perception.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes from, well, the Dogen thing, to study the self is to forget the self.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to forget the self.
Right.
Some days when the meditation is ugly, but it's so important.
Right.
So anyways.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's, I remember years ago, I had conversation with the rabbi that I grew up with, and our families are still to this day closest friends. The son was my age, daughter a couple years older. And he had done every bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, wedding, funeral, everything I've ever gone to for 40 years. And years ago, when I was starting in this stuff, and I went to talk to him one day to ask him some things about leading communities, because he started when, don't quote me on this, but he was probably late 20s or something like that when he started as the head rabbi at that temple, and he ran it for maybe 40 years. And so obviously the experience of leading a community for 40 years is something to learn a lot from, regardless of the religious piece. And we were talking a little bit about Judaism and Buddhism, and he said that when he was in rabbinical school, and I forget the name for it, that the rabbi, his teacher, gave them a practice to sit quietly and contemplate the annihilation of the self. And I thought that was pretty intense, and that is the heart of the Buddhist teachings. So yeah.
And I'd like to skip that part.
Yeah, I know. We all wish we could skip that part. It'd be a lot easier. So. Same to you, Lisa. Happy holidays as well, and we are grateful for you. Other thoughts, questions?
My name's Allison, and right now I'm just because this is all very new to me. We talked a little bit before, but I have this pattern of it's kind of getting into the self and the ego and the annihilation of self, and that's very appealing to me. That's very appealing, I think, because what I've learned studying Buddhism is often the self creates the suffering. So where I'm at now is I've kind of found this new group, new people that are on this path, and this clinging. I want to do this clinging thing. So when we can't hang out or can't do this, all of a sudden I'm feeling down. And that suffering, if I understand this right. So I guess the challenge for me is that being unattached in a clinging way, but not losing compassion for other people and being part of the community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me just to clarify one piece of what you said. When you talk about the clinging, are you talking about clinging to the group of people, and when they're not available to hang out, then you get bothered or whatever?
People or persons.
Or persons.
Depends on this path.
Yeah.
This person has, this enlightenment path, and I want to cling to this person. I want to hang with them
Got
all the time. When they can't, there's that suffering.
Yes.
So how do I navigate that?
Great question. One thing you said earlier, let me just kind of give you a different take on it. You said, and I forget your exact words because I was too busy focused on that part, but you said something to the effect of some of the sense of self causes your suffering. I forget your exact words.
Yes.
All of your sense of self causes the suffering. So I just wanted to, once we know that it is only ourself that causes all of our suffering, this stuff gets much easier. The second part is, it's very common, and I think in a way really beautiful, but also potentially dangerous is a strong word, but I'll just use it, potentially dangerous to think that those people or that person or those places that you're referring to that are on the enlightenment path, as you put it, everybody's on the enlightenment path. They're all just at different places and different stages. So what can happen is when we kind of drop into things like this, say Buddhist practice and teachings, and we really start to embrace them and they're making sense to us, and then we try to narrow down, and I'm kind of making this up, I know you're not saying this necessarily, but we try to narrow down and say, well, I only want to hang with these people now because they're on this path. We'll probably learn more from the people that you're thinking are not on the path. Because they're the ones that are making our lives difficult. Our greatest challenges, the ones that irritate us, frustrate us, annoy us, bother us, drive us crazy, which are often family and friends and those we know and love the best, those are our great teachers. All of us over here, the 10 of us that are like, yes, let's read this Buddhist book and let's meditate and let's all agree with each other and talk about how beautiful meditation and Buddhism is and hug each other and put on our namaste face. That ain't reality. That's an hour out of your day.
But that helps alleviate suffering.
Yes, but what I'm getting at is you're clinging to that. Your question was around clinging and non-attachment, right? What I'm getting at is once you recognize that hanging out with the 10 people over here doing the Buddhist thing is no better than hanging out with the 10 people over here not doing the Buddhist thing, you'll stop being attached to this side of things. I'm not saying abandon that side, just to clarify. I'm not saying stop hanging out with the 10 people doing the Buddhist thing, meditating and studying and practicing. Keep doing that. But it's only because you're saying that that is better than the 10 over here. That's why the attachment exists. The attachment exists because in Buddhist teachings, and again, just to clarify, for me, very often you'll hear detached, or you said unattached. Detached or unattached to me, especially detached when people say it that way, which you didn't, but detached is like a cutting off of. That's when I hear detached. Non-attached means actually love. That you fully love. People often say it was actually, I guess I am going back there. I thought I brought all that up this morning and then we'll just fly by the whole, Christian students. But one of the things they asked me was, as a Buddhist, we learn about we learn about detachment. And we have this understanding that because you detach, you don't love your mother. That's what they were taught. And I said, let me explain non-attachment to you. Non-attachment means endless love, ultimate love, absolute love. But you're not trying to control or fix or change them. You love them regardless of who they are and how they are. So when you're not attached, and attachment comes from Buddhism, we call it duality. We see better, worse, good, bad, right, wrong. And we get on this spiritual journey and we want to spend all our time around the good people, the right people, the spiritual people. So then we're drawing a separation. Duality, good, bad. Spend time over here because that's where we learn just as much. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you heard me say this over the last few weeks, but I did this very early on in kind of my Buddhist journey where I call it Buddhist arrogance. And when I came back from the monastery and I had a whole group of friends I was hanging out with, that now that I was all Buddhist, I was too good to hang out with them. And I thought I was better than they were because I was into Buddhism and they were doing the same stuff I was doing, yesterday. But all of a sudden I'm not doing it anymore. So I thought I was above them. And then after a couple of years of that, I realized well, that's a really crappy thing to do. So then I was able to go back and hang out with them and I didn't have to do what they were doing, but it didn't mean I thought they were any less of a person than I was. So other thoughts, questions?
I have a question about self-esteem
Yeah.
and trying to gain others' approval to fill that void. And then just projecting this person makes the worst. And so let me put on good things. So if there's any comment.
Yeah, you just joined the ranks of why almost every single person shows up to places like this, right? The question around self-esteem, other people judging you, not feeling good enough, all those types of things. So the first thing I'm going to say probably won't help you at all, but the most beautiful thing about self-esteem and other people's judgments of yourself, in Buddhist teachings, the self is an illusion. So there is no self to have self-esteem. And whatever self they think you are can't be true. And on top of that, whatever view or perception you have of yourself is also an illusion. You are just a human being. You done some good things in your life? Never? All right, cool. Well, we love you. You are welcome here, and we love you anyways. Welcome to the place that embraces people who do nothing but terrible things their whole lives. It's actually how many of us got, and that's how I ended up here, that's for sure. So you've done some good, you've done some bad. It's what we all get, right? A life of doing good things, bad things, right things, wrong things. So I just wanted to start with that ultimate practice and teaching of really from the Buddha of non-self, that we are completely different from how we perceive ourselves to be. And therefore, we're completely different from how others perceive ourselves to be. The danger is that we actually start to believe what other people say about us and think about us. And then it impacts us in a huge way. And it crushes us and it breaks our heart and it allows us to just feel miserable because we think other people's views of us are actually correct when they're not. That's just their perception. If you ask 10 people who know you to describe you, they would all tell you different things. Right? All they're really talking about is they're projecting themselves. Now, this idea, again, that's philosophically, intellectually, not too difficult to understand. But then the reality is like, okay, great, but maybe I still lack self-esteem. Maybe I still worry about what other people care about me, right? Life is too short, my friend. My suggestion is to stop caring about what other people think about you. They got their own mess and crap to figure out and deal with. They've had their own trauma, their own experiences, their own difficulties, their own losses, their own pain. And for whatever reason, they decide to throw it on you. Lucky you, right? This practice of self-love, self-compassion with this is really important. Learn to have compassion and love for yourself and try to stop caring about what other people think, or you'll spend your entire life trying to please other people. Your life is your life, not theirs. Don't be afraid to tell them, you know what? Leave me alone. I'm quite fine. You don't like me? Stop talking to me. You have problems with me? Leave me alone. Don't be afraid to. Being Buddhist doesn't mean you just sit quietly in a cave and allow people to be certain ways to you. You're an individual, you're a human. Have love and care for yourself. And if other people can't appreciate you, love you, and express that to you, bye-bye. Their mess, not yours. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is deeply rooted from childhood. And so it's a lot easier. It's actually not a lot easier. It's very simple for me to sit here and say all of this stuff. But what we're really battling is, your entire life experience that isn't going to get solved at, 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. But it can start. It can start with recognizing that nobody has any right to judge you or label you. To put it very directly, they got their own shit. They're not perfect. They've harmed people. So they got problems with you. That's their fault. And don't be afraid to let them know that. With a smile and a hug, of course. You got to be Buddhist about it. Just whatever you do, finish with this and say namaste and everything is great. Leave me the F alone. Namaste. But I don't know. I'm just going to repeat what I just said, but I meant that very seriously. So many people end up on these spiritual journeys looking for something because they just don't feel whole. They don't feel like who they are is enough. They don't feel like who they are is okay. And as my favorite, or at least most shared quote, Suzuki Roshi said, "You're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement." Most people don't tell us that. Most people tell us their whole lives what's wrong with us. You know, you're not this enough, you're not that enough, you're too much of this, you're too much of that, you need this, you need that. Like, nobody's just looking at ourselves and saying, "You're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're good," you know, including ourselves. And I get it. Partially that's because of we've been told that our whole lives from others. Then we begin to believe that nonsense. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Hope that's helpful. There's one question here that I'll address and then we'll close. So a gentle one here. Any thoughts, advice on challenging family dynamics? Of course, this would come up the day before Christmas. My sister has been estranged from my dad and stepmom for several years. We may be doing a video call with them, our husbands, and my nephew today. So let me just address the first part because it'll tie into everything else. And then she added, "And happy holidays to all." It's really fascinating when things come in via text because there's just like, it's really hard to feel and see emotion, but I get it, Lori, I feel it. So any thoughts, advice on challenging family dynamics? Let me just stay there because what you shared after, which is, you know, important for you in the details, really the advice that I have on challenging family dynamics and looking at Buddhist teachings, similar to what I shared earlier about non-attachment, love, embracing present moments. Anytime you have people that you know and love and care about, you're going to have challenging family dynamics. So my first piece of advice with challenging family dynamics is don't ever expect them to go away. Ever. I think very often we go into situations, again, similar to what I said earlier, a lot of what Buddhism has taught me is to be able to see a situation for what it is. When other people are challenging you or pushing your buttons or whatever you want to call it, look at them and understand they're suffering. They have experienced pain. They've experienced loss. Very often we have a hard time, whether it's parents or, you know, maybe older relatives or whatever it might be, even if it's siblings, we have a hard time knowing what their life was like. And we have a hard time stepping out of that relationship we have with them and understanding that they're human and they experience their own trauma and their own difficulties in life. And we very often get stuck in this, well, you're my so-and-so and this is my dynamic with you and that's it. They're a person outside of your relationship with them. And very often we don't step outside that view. And our perception is only what they are to us in, you know, in the family dynamic. But they've been hurt. They've been lied to. They've been through a whole life's worth of experiences that you probably don't know much about. And all we focus on is, well, how are they towards me? See their suffering, see their pain, and embrace the fact that if you have family, congratulations, you're a lucky one. And it's going to come with very tremendous difficulty. And be grateful for it because it's an opportunity to teach you a lot. So I don't know that that helps too much. I would use the mute button as often as possible if you're afraid of what you're going to say. And just try to be present. You know, in Zen practice, there's an expression called to bear witness. And when we bear witness to whether it's death, whether it's loss, whether it's suffering, just be an observer of the situation. I'll kind of end with this thought. Think of it like watching a movie. I know this might seem kind of odd, giving like family relationships and dynamics and comparing that to watching a movie. But if, you go pay, $37 and you watch a movie on a Tuesday afternoon at a theater, you're not sitting there probably screaming and yelling at the screen. You're not throwing popcorn at it. I don't know, maybe you are. I happened to see the head nod out of the corner of my eye. Right. So most people are not screaming and yelling at the screen or throwing popcorn, but you're watching it. You're watching the movie unfold. You're seeing how it plays out. You're bearing witness to it. You're observing it. You're experiencing your emotions and the rise and the fall and the laughter and the tears and all that, but you're just observing it. You're becoming an observer of what's happening at a movie. And very often with situations like this, become the observer. And that might seem kind of cold and harsh a little bit, but if it's something that's really going to like destroy you, and you know that getting too emotionally wrapped up is not going to be healthy for you or anybody, just observe it. Not ignore it. When you watch a movie, you're not ignoring the movie. You're observing it, but you're silent. So I hope that's helpful. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gain be transferred to those who need it most. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before you head out. Thank you, Laura. I'm glad that helped. We got a haha, it helps. Thanks. So that's good news. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple about 16 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns or gurus or masters. We're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. A couple things out of the ordinary. New Year's, this will be our 17th annual Dharma Bum New Year's. So if you've never done a silent and sober New Year's, this is an opportunity to do them both. We'll gather 7 o'clock for a potluck, vegetarian potluck downstairs. 9 o'clock, I'll do a history, a vision of the Dharma Bum Temple. And about 11:30, we'll come up here and we'll do a 20-minute silent meditation going into midnight. So the whole night is not silent, just the last 20 minutes or so for the meditation. Some people come at 7, they're smart and home and in bed by 9:30. Some people come at 9 o'clock and some people just show up at 11:30 with lots of blankets and pillows to stay warm and take the new year in silence. So thanks for being here. Buddha for you is downstairs. If you need anything, if you want to stick around and help sweep up or clean, that's always appreciated. Yeah, thanks all. Good luck. I see lots of tears and emotions out there, so you'll get through this. January will be here soon, I promise.
Thank you.